Hi everyone, welcome back to another week of Learning Kitchen Live. My name is Carolyn and I'm one of the registered dietitians here at Community Servings. I'm excited to be with you all today to show you how to make garlic pasta with roasted tomatoes. If you enjoy this recipe and want to try it out at home, it will be linked in the bottom or comment section of this video. So the inspiration for this recipe actually came from some leftover nutritional yeast that we had in the Learning Kitchen. This might not be something that you regularly have in your pantry at home, but I'm going to talk to you about its uses, its nutritional benefits, and why it might be something you'd consider purchasing in the future. So for this recipe, it's a pasta-based dish. So I already went ahead and cooked up some whole wheat pasta here. Just a little bit of a meal tip recipe or a meal prep recipe. If you're making a dish later in the week with pasta in it, you could always cook and prepare the pasta ahead of time, and then it's already ready for you when it comes time to putting the dish together. To start this recipe off, what we're going to do is roast up our tomatoes. In this bowl here, I have combined about 3 cups of grape tomatoes that I've cut in half and just tossed in a little bit of olive oil and a pinch of salt. What we're going to do is just put these on our baking sheet, and we're going to pop these in the oven at about 400 degrees for 20 minutes or just while this recipe, the sauce particularly cooks. Today I'm using grape tomatoes, but you could really use any tomato that you have at home. This recipe I have used grape tomatoes, I've used cherry tomatoes, I've used plum tomatoes, and just cut them up into smaller pieces. So really whatever you have available is perfectly fine. I'll be right back. All right, so the bulk of this recipe is really preparing the sauce that this is going to go in. So I'm going to just heat a little bit of olive oil over medium-high heat. And to this pan, we are going to add 2 diced shallots and 8 cloves of minced garlic. What I like about this recipe is that you can really adapt it to your own. I love garlic, so I'm going to use all 8 cloves or maybe a little more. If you do not like garlic, you could use less. I wouldn't say omit it from the recipe because it really does give nice flavor, but you could certainly use less. And we're using a shallot today, but if you didn't have a shallot, you could use a white onion, yellow onion, or just leave it out entirely. The onion's really just for more of like a flavor profile, so it's perfectly fine if you're not going to use that. All right. So we are going to let these onions and garlic, or the shallot and the garlic, cook up for about 4 to 5 minutes until they're soft and fragrant. And while these are sauteing up, what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about nutritional yeast. So this is nutritional yeast. It comes in a jar just like this. You would find this in the baking aisle of your grocery store. It might be where the spices are located or where the other yeast products are, so like baking yeast, this is where you would find it. What is great about nutritional yeast is that it is plant-based. So it comes in, I don't know if you can see, but it's kind of like yellow and flaky in color. And it has what people describe cheesy or nutty flavor to it. But as I said, it's entirely plant-based. So it's great if you follow a vegan or vegetarian diet or you have a milk allergy. And because it has that almost cheesy flavor to it, it's often used in dishes like pasta sauces or other applications to give that cheesy flavor for someone who might not be able to eat traditional cheese. I usually have nutritional yeast in my house and make this recipe quite often because my sister has a milk allergy. So she cannot have any dairy products whatsoever. So this is a great option to have and why I always have a bottle in my pantry and why this dish came to mind for the recipe today. Now in terms of nutritional yeast, it does pack a nutritional punch. It is low in sodium, which is great compared to other cheeses. It has fiber in here and it's a complete protein. So again, if you're following a vegan or vegetarian diet, that's really important. All it means if something's a complete protein is that it has all the amino acids or essential amino acids that our body can't produce. Now, typically, you're going to find these in animal products, and a lot of plant-based foods aren't complete proteins. So if that's something of concern for you, this could be a great supplement to your diet or your weekly menus. In addition to what I talked about, having fiber, being low in sodium, and being a complete protein, it also contains vitamin B12. So vitamin B12, what that does for our body, it helps with the formation of red blood cells, and it also helps with your energy levels. Similarly to complete proteins, B12 is often found in animal foods. So think like fish, dairy, chicken, beef, eggs, those types of foods. So again, if you're following a vegan or vegetarian diet, it might be hard to get vitamin B12. So another great reason why this could be added to your diet. All right, so these are softening up nicely, our garlic and shallot here. What we're going to do next is start to put the sauce together. And we're going to add in about 3 to 4 tablespoons of just all-purpose flour and mix it together. Some clumps will form, but that's okay. You just want to coat all of the garlic and the onions. I forgot my whisk today, so let me just grab that real quick. And then what we're going to do to this is we're going to start to incorporate very slowly some milk. Today I'm just using low-fat cow's milk, but you could use any milk that you had at home. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slowly whisk this in and continue to mix until everything's incorporated. And you want to avoid any large clumps of that flour. So like I said, I'm just using cow's milk today, but you certainly could go ahead and use any type of milk you want. I told you earlier I make this oftentimes when my sister comes over, or this is actually how I found this recipe. So if I was making this for her or for someone who maybe has a dairy allergy, I would use an unsweetened plant-based milk. I've used unsweetened soy milk before, as well as unsweetened almond milk, and they all come out great. All right, so we're just going to, again, continue to incorporate this until it's all combined. And you're going to want to make sure that you're getting a large enough pot to do this. So you can see I have a pretty big saute pan here because you don't want it to boil over. I'm going to adjust the heat a little bit so that we can bring it up to a gentle simmer. And just continue to whisk this because we don't want that clumps of flour forming in the sauce. All right, so at this point, we're going to add our nutritional yeast in, a little bit of salt and pepper, and then it's a waiting game until this sauce thickens up. So you can see here, maybe you'll be able to see a little bit better the nutritional yeast. It is that yellow color and slightly flaky in texture. So we're going to just sprinkle this right on in. We have about 2 to 3 tablespoons. If you really like that cheesy flavor, you could certainly add more or adjust it at the end. So we're just going to whisk this all together. We're going to add a bit more salt and pepper. Oops. And we're going to bring this to a gentle simmer or boil until it thickens up. Cooking this, the time or length, it really just depends on how thick you want your sauce. The longer you let it sit here on the stovetop and simmer, the thicker that it's going to become. So we are going to let this thicken a little bit just so you can see the final product. All right. And while we do that, I want to talk a little bit more about the nutritional yeast and why you might purchase it. So I talked about its nutritional benefits, right? If you follow a vegan, vegetarian diet, or if maybe you have a milk or dairy allergy. But what if you don't have any of those? Is this still worth it to purchase? I think so. It has a lot of nutritional benefits. You can use it in dishes just like this to add some extra fiber to your meals or some extra protein or just a unique flavor profile. But you can also use it in other foods as well. You could sprinkle it over popcorn as a different flavor or additive to your popcorn. You can add it to other pasta sauces or dishes. You could put it over proteins. You can also use it over roasted veggies or roasted potatoes. So definitely a lot of different applications that you could use for nutritional yeast. All right. So again, Maybe you don't follow a specific vegan diet, vegetarian diet, maybe you don't have a dairy allergy, but it's certainly something you could consider purchasing. I think one of my favorite things about this is its shelf life. I know a lot of times when you go to the grocery store, you're trying to think, how can I get the most bang for my buck? I don't want to be buying things and then throwing them away 2 weeks later. Nutritional yeast has quite the shelf life. So if you store this properly, it could actually last for up to 2 years in your pantry. You're going to want to keep it in a cool, dark place. So like a cabinet, cupboard, you could keep it in the fridge or like a dark pantry, all work really well. So 2 years is a pretty long time. I think if you make sauces like this or you start to use it in other dishes, you'll find that you're going to use it a lot faster than 2 years. But it's kind of nice knowing if you purchase it, it's not going to go bad within a couple of weeks and you're going to be like, great, there's so many dollars wasted or just thrown away. All right, so this is still thickening it up nicely. I'm going to check on our tomatoes, mostly because our ovens here are industrial, so I don't want them to burn to a crisp. So hold one moment. All right, so our tomatoes, good thing I checked on them, are getting pretty roasted here. Again, it's going to depend on your oven. Here we have industrial kitchens, so things cook very, very fast. If I were making this at home, honestly, they do take about 20 minutes to roast up, and so just be mindful of that when you're preparing this dish. All right, so what we're going to do in just a couple of minutes is combine everything in this one pot here. If you like something like your sauce really creamy, you could go ahead and use an immersion blender to blend this all up or throw it into a regular blender. I personally don't like to dirty more dishes, and I also like the texture that it gives with the chunks of the shallot and garlic, so I don't tend to blend this, but it is certainly something that you could do at home. All right, the last thing that I just wanted to talk about is how can you add variety to this or maybe switch it up at home. One thing I talked about already is the milk being used. You could use any type of milk option, cow's milk, plant-based milk. If you're using plant-based milk, I definitely would go with the unsweetened option. So when you're at the grocery store, make sure you looked for unsweetened almond milk, unsweetened soy milk. It's not going to have added sugar in it, and it won't be as sweet. So it'll actually, if you use those, you're going to get added sugar, but the sauce might taste a little funky, mostly because you'll have that sweetness from it. The other thing that you can switch up is the pasta. Today we're using just a whole wheat pasta, so for some extra fiber and nutrients. If you are making this for yourself or someone who maybe follows a gluten-free diet, you could use a gluten-free pasta. That would be a great choice. And the other thing that I've done at home is switch up the veggies. So we're using tomatoes today, but I like this recipe because a lot of the ingredients are usually in my pantry or refrigerator already. And when it comes time to making it, I'll just use whatever vegetables we have on hand. Tomatoes are really great because they add that vibrant red color. Some of my other favorites that I've used are roasted asparagus, roasted green beans, and roasted broccoli. So those are really nice because they add a pop of green to the meal and just really brighten up the dish. Lastly, in terms of kind of varying this or making it your own, is you could add a source of protein. So grilled or baked chicken would be a great option. Something like white beans or chickpeas could be added as well. But if you don't want to do that, that's okay too, because it's tasty on its own. All right, so you can already see, if you can see on the view here, the sauce definitely has thickened up. And if we let this keep going, it would just get thicker and thicker. In the interest of time, we're not going to do that, but you really could leave this on your stovetop for 10 to 15 minutes while constantly stirring it so that it's not going to stick to the pan. But it really will start to thicken up and create more of that like creamy, ooey gooey sauce. All right. So final steps of this recipe is to combine the pasta in here and then your roasted tomatoes. We'll do our pasta first. And this is why you also need a bigger pan so that everything can come together really easily. If you didn't want to do this right in the pan, you certainly could add it into like a separate bowl. But again, I don't like to dirty a lot of dishes, so it's nice to be able to combine it right in this one dish. All right, so we're just gonna give it a stir until everything is combined and in the sauce. You're gonna see that the tomatoes are gonna break apart just because you did roast them in the oven, and that's perfectly fine. I think it actually is nice because some of the juices will burst and then end up in all of the sauce, which is kind of cool. At this point, this is it. So it's pretty easy to come together. I know I had prepped a couple things ahead of time, but honestly, if you were gonna make this at home, it's a pretty easy dish that can come together in less than 30 minutes for you or your family. As I said, you can adapt it to meet your family's needs or your personal taste preferences, which is always great when it comes to cooking. And it is pretty nutritious. So I hope over the course of this video, you are excited to try this. You're excited to maybe try nutritional yeast. And if you do try it, if you purchase nutritional yeast, if you try it out, if you make this recipe, please let us know in the comments section. We always love to hear from you. With that, we're going to eat some of this because it smells delicious. And we hope that you join us next week on Learning Kitchen Live. Thanks.